Hi, guys.
Hello.
Welcome to Etta Arlene Spiritcast. If you're new to this podcast, we talk about all things related to mindfulness, magic, astrology, tarot, Reiki, meditation, anything in that realm. Today we have an amazing guest. Her name is Jasmine, and this is an astrology episode. This is our first astrologer that we've had on the show, and it was an amazing conversation. I learned so much about astrology, and it really shifted my perspective on how I move through the world of astrology.
Jasmine literally sparked my interest in astrology, like full blown. We've all, if you're involved in the metaphysics and so on and so forth, obviously you know like the basics of certain things, but the depth of it really intrigues me. So I'm excited to learn more.
Yeah, so before we get in the episode, would you like to tell everybody where they can find us at?
So you can follow us over on Instagram and Threads at Etta Arlene. You can follow us pretty much everywhere at Etta Arlene. We post Reiki-infused videos to YouTube multiple times a week at Etta Arlene. Go like and subscribe. And if you like Reiki, we send Reiki out to everybody on our email list on the 1st of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go sign up for our email list at ettaarlene.com/Reiki. And if you like this podcast and what we do, please consider leaving a review on whatever you're listening to this on. And if you'd like to support this podcast, you can become a patron, donate, or go to our website, ettaarlene.com/shop, and check out all the stuff that we create. And thank you to everybody who has donated and our patrons currently.
All right, let's get into the episode.
All right.
So you were talking about your family, like how you got into astrology.
Yeah. So, throughout my life, I would hear about astrology because my mother did it and my grandmother did it all the way back to my grandmother. I grew up hearing that I was related to the philosopher Johannes Kepler, who was also an astrologer and an astronomer back in the 14th century. And I have never actually seen the family tree that links us, but my grandmother says she has. And actually, it's really funny because there is a book written about him and his mom. We were talking about it a little earlier because she was tried as a witch. But so I actually there's a whole museum dedicated to Johannes Kepler. I think it's in Germany. And so I wrote to the author of the book to ask him if he had a family tree for Johannes Kepler or if the museum did. And he said he wasn't able to find one. So it's just kind of family lore. The Keplers, there is a whole group of them that live in central Pennsylvania. And that's where the farm was that we grew up. And my grandmother links herself directly to her aunt who has the name. So it was just, part of the family. So whether it's true or not, astrology has kind of come down the line as well. And so my great aunt studied it, my grandmother studied it, and my mom has studied it. And just growing up, I would hear about it in various ways. And also, I think as a child, I also did read my horoscope, in teen magazine. I don't know.
I did too.
So I was curious about it, but it didn't really make sense to me. I think that the logical part of my brain, so much in spirit comes from the heart. You have to turn off the logical brain to really get it, And so it wasn't until, I went on a journey. And when I went on this journey, I had kind of a spiritual awakening. And in that awakening, when I started finally understanding energy, that's when astrology started clicking for me. It was like the piece that I missed. And so then I could go back and start understanding, this is the energy of that planet. This is the energy of that planet. And this is how it feels, when it combines. And this is what happens when a planet transits that part of somebody's chart and why it happens. Because you just really have to understand that things happen. There's just so much happening in our universe at this energetic level that we can't necessarily see with our eyes. But, quantum physics talks about it all the time. And they're just trying to figure it out as well. But it's kind of the way astrology explains what's going on at that level within our bodies. So essentially, astrology is just the idea that in the moment something is created, whether it's a person, a marriage, a company, a building, essentially it takes on the energy of the moment it was created, where it was created. And astrology can show kind of that map of it. So, you were born in a specific place at a specific time. So you took on the energy of the planets, of the universe in that moment. And it becomes your individual map, just like your fingerprint is your own individual fingerprint. Your astrological chart is your own astrological map as well. And so, but, in countries where they really follow astrology and really understand it, somebody will go to an astrologer to ask for an auspicious time to get married, because it's believed in astrology that the moment the marriage is created, it takes on the energy of that the map, the energy of the universe in that moment. So, or they'll ask, financial astrology, from the way I understand it, is just following the birth chart of any company when it was created. And, so you just go back and you look at, when did a company go public, or when was it officially created? And you pull up the birth chart of that and you look at how the transiting planets affect the birth chart of that company. And so that's generally the idea of it. And so it really takes understanding things at an energetic level to really understand why it can work. And I entered as a skeptic, which I think is good because it made me more critical. And then as it started making sense and things started coming together, and I started seeing how transits really do affect people and how I really can see when major events are going to be happening. Not all the time, because energy is like the waves of the ocean. It comes in and it goes out, and very slowly. And so from an astrological standpoint, kind of anything can happen when the wave is coming in, and it can happen when it's going out. So some people claim that they can say exactly when something's going to happen, but I haven't really found that to be the case for me. It's more of a general time frame that things will happen. And it really can it tells you about, the karma you're born into this life with, the karma that you're meant to learn in this life. It makes sense of why things are happening the way they are in this moment. So it's nice when you get an astrological reading, because if you're going through something, you can see when it's going to end. If something is great, you can kind of see when something is coming to, things are always happening, always. But also it kind of allows you to understand better why it is that you're going through what you're going through. So when Pluto is transiting the north or the south node, for example, you just understand that if there's a course correction needed in somebody's life so they can get back on their karmic path, something's going to happen. And so essentially, anytime I've done a reading and somebody has just gone through that or will be going through that, the way it will manifest, you can kind of sometimes try to guess, but in the end, I think that when people understand that what they're going through is a course correction in their life, there's something that clicks and they kind of understand. I think it's always helpful to understand that this too shall pass. And also, that something else is coming, that they're supposed to give up something because something good is coming. And so I think there's hope kind of in that message as well.
I love that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that too. Yeah. We had, we know some people who are going through stuff. We were just talking about that together, the idea of shedding. So it's interesting that you can kind of look at your chart to find guidance or hope or help in navigating it. But the idea that it will pass is really cool. Wow. It makes me want to look at my chart and see if those types of moments in my life, if what the corresponding, planets are and stuff, just out of curiosity. That's really cool. Yeah.
And then we can go back for another
this is happening.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. I don't think I've perceived astrology that way, the way you're saying it. I mean, I think, when you look at magic, some of the old magic books and stuff, they'll line things up with astrology a lot.
Oh, interesting.
It's I guess it would fall under planetary magic. And so what the practitioner will do is they will look at where the sun is, or depending on what they're doing. So the energy of the planet corresponds with what they're trying to manifest. If it's for getting more energy so they can take on a project, they'll see where the sun is at. Or if it's to feel more love, they'll see where Venus is. Yeah. And there, some of these books, they're so intense, they go down to the hour. And so the beautiful thing with that type of magic is it makes you more in flow with the planet, because you have to wait and you're following what the planet is doing and what nature is doing, versus trying to aggressively, I don't know, try to work on things. You're trying to work on it naturally and in flow, as opposed to doing things that are against what
nature is doing.
I just did talk about it a little bit, actually, about following the moon and like kind of doing things according to the moon, because the moon affects all of us, some more than others, but for sure, the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. And so in the course of a month, it goes all the way around. And there are, a lot of like arguments for why, if we followed a moon calendar, like some, groups do, if we followed that, then there would be exactly a certain amount of days every month and exactly a certain amount of days in the year. But when this moon is, for example, in, Cancer, we're just going to feel more emotional. It's just how it is.
And double down.
Yeah. And when the moon is in, like, there are just some days where I'm like, today's the day I'm going to pay all my bills. And I'm like, I bet you it's either in Virgo or Capricorn, one of the, and it inevitably is. I just and I'm also a Cancer sun sign. So, okay, cool. Yeah. And so we are more affected by the moon. Following the moon is very, very helpful for us to understand why we feel the way we feel. And so
that's really cool. Do you follow?
I'm going to.
Get a moon calendar.
I
feel like our friend Stephanie's been screaming at you.
She's been screaming. But actually, tomorrow the Lunar New Year. So that's cool.
Yeah, it is. Actually, I thought that it was neat that this interview was happening at that time. It feels like there's like a lot of new things in general. And this year is, astrologically, there are a lot of new things. A lot of planets are moving into new signs. And these are planets that don't move signs. Like Pluto, you're looking at 15 to 20 years before it moves a sign, and it's moving into Aquarius, And so, and then, you look at Neptune, 15 years, and it's changing signs from Pisces to Aries. And then you're looking at Saturn, which is, every 7 years it changes signs, and they're all changing. Somehow the stars are aligning and they're all changing signs this year. So it does bring a lot of newness, which, can be exciting. Things are always changing, but also it's moving things in an interesting direction that we'll see. Like, I've listened to other astrologers talk about where they see things going, and nobody actually knows, but it's fascinating. It's a fascinating time. The last time Pluto changed signs, it changed into Capricorn in like around 2008, and then the markets crashed, and so, but that was like kind of showed. So if you see from a financial standpoint and the structures that we live in, essentially we've gone from that age and over the last, however many years it's been, and now finally it's moved officially into Aquarius, and, we have a new president, and we have, but a lot has happened also in the meantime, in the sense that the US just had our own Pluto return. So Pluto is in Capricorn in the birth chart of the United States. And so we just had our own Pluto return, which means a big rebirth. If you think about where Pluto was the last time, like when the US was born, which is essentially, when we signed our Declaration of Independence. And so that was a time of like a lot of unknowns and the creating of something brand new. And so it's kind of that energy that we're moving into this time with, which is really interesting and fascinating. And, I think a lot of people are very nervous. And I think that all of our fears make sense to us, and so, and change is scary, and so, but I'm looking forward to seeing how it manifests, over time. So if you can look at it from, like in spirituality, we're all just watchers, we're these spirits in a body, and the body gives us the ability to be here on this, in this planet and this realm and everything. And so if you can watch it all from the perspective of being the watcher, it's kind of an exciting time to, we have an exciting movie going on out there.
It's been a crazy action suspense for the past 5 years. 5+ years.
Forever, honestly. Like, there's no chill.
Really a decade.
Yeah, I can
find myself being so thankful to be in Pittsburgh because I'm like, well, when the oceans rise, we'll be oceanfront. And it's like, it sounds like a terrible thing to say, but I just feel like nobody's focusing on Pittsburgh. We get to be in this
bubble of
it
get a taste of big city. Like, you can still have like whatever you want to have in the city. If you want to have like the country retreat, you can have that. If you want to be in the city, you can be in a neighborhood that accommodates that feeling. But we had a guest on a long time ago, and she said that where we're located is going to be like less affected by global warming. For some reason, it's like the coordinates or something where we're at. We're not going to have it is extreme compared, but not as extreme as other locations. Or like,
I'm not going to lie. I see Pittsburgh as like the epicenter of the spiritual world, truthfully, because
There's a prophecy.
There's a
prophecy
I have
about
heard
it.
about.
Have you?
Well, I think I heard about it. I don't know if I heard about that one, but
Okay.
but I just feel like over the course of time that we know it, I was told Native American holy ground, but then like over the centuries, like Pittsburgh has provided all of the minerals to like make the world go, whether it was coal,
Yeah.
the steel community was here. We have these incredibly intense rivers. If you go down and you meditate next to these rivers, it's just so like the energy is so strong. Like I have to like pull myself back away from the river. I'm like worried it's going to come and like take me down. Our rivers are so deep that literally a World War II plane has gotten lost in the river somewhere. Nobody's been able to find it.
There's all kinds of stuff.
and it's just
at night.
I did. It was a couple years ago. I had the luxury of being able to go to the Point. It was during art festivals, one of those seasons where everything's happening all at once. And the Point, for some reason, nothing was going on there. So me and two of my friends were able to sit there for hours and just meditate and reflect. Because when you're sitting there, you realize, I don't know, it's just like a mindfulness thing. There was so much stillness in that moment, but then you're looking around and you have all these car lights and you have the lights of the city and then you have all this life happening.
Yeah.
So it's just like really surreal.
It's really interesting. What's coming to me like as you're saying that? So I've meditated at dawn there, but then the sun comes up over the east end. So it's a hillside and everything where it comes up, but it sets over, kind of like the north side area when you're in the sunset. And I secretly wonder, is there a date during the year where you can sit at the Point and the sun comes down the third river?
I bet you.
It would be so cool to find that. It would be like our own Pittsburgh solstice day.
That'd be
I
fun.
feel like I live kind of on one of the valleys in Pittsburgh. And there are, in the summer, the way the sun rises, it rises over the valley and lights it up. And then it sets over the valley on the other side and lights it up again. So it's just so magical in the summer. But there are times when it aligns and I'm pretty sure it's over. I can't see it from my house and it's rising and it's winter. So I'm not at the river, but I feel like there's also like a rise that happens over the rivers as well.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of like, I'm curious. I want to see. And if anybody listens to your podcast and has studied the way the sun rises and sets over the rivers,
A call of action to our listeners. If you know any cool stuff about the alignments, let us know.
I bet Avi does. Remember that guest?
Yeah, we had a first season a long time ago. We had a
Yeah.
guy. He was really cool. He talked about like sound bars, like the sound bar healing. Do you know about that and a couple other things? But we met him because we used to go to a moon meditation at the Point.
Yeah.
Cool.
In our first episode, we talked about that actually.
Do we?
Yeah, first episode.
Okay. COVID had stopped it though.
COVID stopped
Yeah,
it.
so we've been going for about a year. And
Maybe
then
we can start it again.
Yeah, it was
Probably.
cool. A lot of people started going.
A lot of people
It
started
started
going.
small and then it just got bigger and bigger.
Good things happen
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. We just kind of all just went there, no warning. We just started
Just
doing it.
flash mob the
Yeah,
Point.
That's great.
Yeah.
But there's like a plaque at the Point, well, allegedly is marking where there is a huge crystal there. So there's a massive quartz crystal allegedly that was so big they couldn't extract it. So they
Wow.
just built over it.
Really?
So I think there's a plaque right on top of where it's
Yeah, it's
at.
like that's where it's supposed to be located.
So that's where they would do the
Yeah.
meditation. And they would do like the whole pyramid and you'd bring
everybody
stuff,
would bring like,
crystal.
something, anything that's yours, you put in the middle of it. So we bring stone.
Yeah. Candles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was cross all different paths, so it wasn't like exclusively one. And then you could participate if you wanted and like speak. Sometimes there would be people there who were really like channelers and things like that. So it was cool because every now and then somebody would have like a message for the group.
Let's do it. Let's
I think it'd be fun.
Yeah.
It'd be fun. We could probably get all of our people to go.
Yeah,
Get the whole community together and everybody.
Yeah.
That's like another nice thing about Pittsburgh. We're still in Pittsburgh people.
Move to Pittsburgh.
Well, I could go on about Pittsburgh forever. Go ahead. Yeah.
The metaphysical community here.
Yeah.
It's not huge,
Right.
but it's nice.
Yeah.
And then
It's perfect.
once you start meeting people, then you start to meet people.
Yeah.
And then it all just starts to connect and then you start to see, okay, well, there's that cool
Yeah.
healing center. And then there's that cool store that has teaching
Yeah.
available. So that's something too that's beautiful, which I don't think every city has.
Right.
So we talk like a lot of people, and they're like, oh, I wish people would move here. I'm like, you guys can.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's like a diverse spiritual community here too. Like a lot of people doing a lot of different things,
I think it's just because so many people came, especially for, not only were people already located here, but the steel brought so many different diverse like populations that all brought with them their own spiritual history. We hear a lot about, Native American spirituality, but, the pagans of the Europeans who they came, to be part of the steel industries as well. Like they all have their histories as well. So exactly.
Yeah. Huge community.
Yeah. But also just the water. There's so much natural water here. And I was like, okay, if I had unlimited money and I just wanted to research something, I would literally decide to try to map out where all the springs are in Pittsburgh because there's so many springs. It's so ironic to me that we're dealing with this like lead water pipe crisis when we have all this natural water everywhere. I mean, there used to be just springs people could go bathe in 100% natural water. You just go outside of the city and there are waterfalls you can drink out of, and just perfectly, it's fine. And, and then we have like amazing marble water features that still exist along Fifth Avenue, where people could just walk up and get a drink of fresh water, kind of like when you're in Rome or, all these places with natural water. It's just so magical to me. I'm like, this is so magical. Like, it's just so interesting. Like when you can see things that nobody else really notices, and
when you're able to see
it's just so full of magic like that.
It is.
Yeah, definitely.
With your eyes are open to see it.
Yeah.
If you're just operating and not looking.
And do you know about the Mary Shrine in Oakland? Like there's this Shrine to Mary, and it's like because the water is natural and it's all the way over off of Fraser Street in Oakland, but it's like you have to like go almost through somebody's yard to get to it. But it's there and it's like protected and it's like a site that people still go visit, and it's to Mary, and it's so cool. Yeah.
I didn't know about that.
I'm getting trespassing.
No, it's the sidewalk, and so like you have to. It is the sidewalk, but you feel like you're like, I'm not allowed to go down this way, but you totally are.
I definitely want to go.
I actually know about it because friends of my family lived in those houses, and I would be hanging out with their kids, and these people, especially old people who were part of the Italian community of Pittsburgh, they would just pass their house, and I would ask my friends, well, where are they going? And they said, oh, there's just a shrine down there, so they go there. And so it's like, that's so cool.
There's another spot, I can't remember where, but it is it's not a shrine. I don't know if it's a shrine, but it's like supposed to be blessed water somewhere. I can't remember. A beautiful, like, symbolic area.
Oh, yeah, all over.
That has blessed water, which is another cool thing about Pittsburgh.
Yeah, all these things. I mean, just so much history. And
the world is crazy.
Incredible.
Come to Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Well, and then we also have, just outside, it's a little bit far, but the Serpent Mound and like the various mounds that have been, apparently there was one right on the north side also that had been ruined during the steel industry time. And so, but like if you Google it, it comes up with like the pictures of it. And unfortunately it was taken down, but it existed all over this area. And it's just such a powerful area. And I do think the water is a large part of it, but all the minerals and then, just recently now it's like natural gas is coming from this area. It's like they just keep finding more and more. The earth, Mother Earth just keeps giving. It's rich in this area. Yeah. So it's very powerful.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. We can.
So you grew up with astrology in your family. Did your mom or your grandmother like read your charts when you were younger?
Yeah.
How was that experience?
It's part of the reason I wanted to learn to read it for myself.
Okay. I don't like your interpretation.
like they would read it and I'm like, does it really say that? I actually remember, it's really funny. My mom might listen to this later, but like as a child, I remember she would read to me, but she would always like put our names in the book, like me and my sister's names. So she would say like, oh, and Jasmine is like washing her hands, if it said whatever name was. So I remember as a child thinking to myself, does it really say my name? I need to learn to read so I can see if it says my name or not. And then like ultimately the book didn't have words at all. So she was just making it all up. But the same with astrology. Like she would tell me what she saw and I would think to myself, does it really say that? Like, or because it would just match up so much with her views that I was also like a little bit suspicious. So I was like, I have to figure this out for myself. So I started like really looking into it later and just to see like, and honestly, I do feel like with almost everything spiritual, astrologically speaking, and definitely like astrology. And you can back this up with like runes or anything. But, they say that you find your mentor or your spiritual guide because they have a message that you're meant to receive. And it is true to a certain extent that we are all just translators of what we're seeing, so like we're kind of just this vessel that is translating what we're seeing, but all of us have our own filter, because we're people in the end. And like, I think that's another question that I always thought to myself about. It was like, so these like people who are these gurus, I'm like, but they're still people, right? So like, are they really perfect or are they still just people? And I think in the end, I think the answer is, and I don't know if everyone would agree with this, but they're still just people. And so if you get them on a bad day, they might give you a message that's bad. Now, are you meant to get that message? Maybe that's divine timing. Nobody can explain it, but it's like the way it's meant to be. But with my mom, like when I would listen to her, give her readings, she would give the reading she was meant to be giving. And I do make peace with that. But I would also think to myself, does she really just not like the guy I'm dating? Is she telling that spiritually we are not meant to be together? Or is this just like the message I'm meant to be getting at this moment?
Oh my God. Has she ever been like, I told you?
Honestly, like, I think that I just believed her so much that I just kind of, if she told me somebody wasn't meant to be, I was just like, okay, bye.
When it came to people's like relationships and stuff, our mom, she was not an astrologer, but she knew.
It 6 months.
She was in tune, but she knew. And she was always, even when I didn't want her to be, she was painfully right about everything. Yeah.
And she was a Virgo, so she loved
really Was she a Virgo too? I think so.
I think we both were.
Yeah, I think, But that's so funny.
Yeah.
I love that story about your mom. It's really,
that's really great.
Yeah, I love it. She will.
I think it's interesting you brought up kind of like the idea of like pulling down information from like the divine, and you have like essentially these oracles, we'll call it that. When I was learning the Greek oracle, and I believe this is Dr. John Opsipos who was speaking on it, but he was like saying how you're speaking words over people. So there is this like burden that you're mindful of what you're saying because it can affect that person and how you like, but it said the oracle's not perfect is what he would say. So like the gods are perfect, because we're talking Greek. So of course they're like, we are perfect. But
with all of their heads, everything.
You're like reading them and you're like, are you guys perfect?
Yeah.
It sounds stressful. You guys keep fighting.
Definitely died.
Like you
extreme misfortune fall upon their bloodline.
Wow. Like
this is perfection.
Yeah. Her messages were supposedly they didn't make mistakes, but it was us and how we received them and how we. So they would say that the oracle had to be very like mindful of how the words she spoke. So if she didn't like somebody, she could deliver that message in a way that was not as nice because then she's putting that in their mind kind of thing.
It's a powerful be.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so I always think about that when I do readings, how I know people, I hear people who will say things like, I just want cutthroat and honest, or they're just brutal, or I love, and I'm like, that's fine if that works for you. But for me, I don't want to allow my opinions and that type of thing to affect the reading because that will happen inevitably, even if we try not to. But also, like, I don't want to send somebody on a path that could be a little harder than it has to be. For example, like, let's say there was like a love reading or something. Let's say I'm pulling tarot and I see that they're having a hard time with their partner. I could go and say, you guys aren't good. You're not good. You're done or whatever. But what if it's more like they need to have better communication? And then they realize they're not done. They're good or they're bad on their own. Like, what if I pulled more cards? What if I didn't definitively say that? And then I put that in that person's mind. Yeah. And so like, I try to be as mindful as I can that I don't direct somebody down a course that could be, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But I think I agree with you. There is definitely that power, that space you had.
Yeah.
That's not perfect.
Right.
So a responsible reader knows that.
Yeah. An interesting class out at Lilydale, and the person definitely said, there's like responsible ways to read, and there are kind of ways that you just don't want to plant negative seeds.
Yes,
and if for some reason you're giving a read to someone and you're hearing messages from, the spirits, and for some reason, like Cancer comes into your head, it's like, don't say it. Just don't. You can't say it. I mean, you just can't. First of all, it might be something in your own path that is like coming to you out of nowhere. And then you know how to deal with it because you're the one receiving the message and you understand it. But the minute you say it to someone else, it's created a seed that plants energetically, and then that person starts thinking about it, and then the power of thought is just it creates your reality, and then your reality is like everything you do, and it's just not like the direction that you want to go. Even with astrology, the hard conversations are hard, but like almost with everything, first of all, it's for your greater good. Like with astrology, so any message that I give, like something hard might be coming, but there's always something on the other side of it. Pluto is the planet, for example, of burning down and rebuilding. So sometimes you have to burn down in order to rebuild, but the rebuilding is there. So if you know you have a tough Pluto transit coming up, like it's likely that something is going to shift, and you have to, like, the message there generally for me is when I'm talking to people about it, it's let it go so that you can receive what you're meant to receive. And so trying to put it in a way that is more positive. I mean, that's like so much easier said than done. But I think that if somebody knows that behind whatever is going on or whatever is coming is something even more magical, it helps you get through the darkness a little bit. So
like how would I express something difficult to somebody I care about?
Right.
And like, I don't want them to have that weight on them. And that's how I'll like move. So like the way you say things, and I think that's why there are so many, like in mythology, I love mythology. You have a lot of oracle gods that also double in poetry because it's communication. So I think that that's teaching us like how we phrase things matters. You can deliver the same message in a way that could put somebody through turmoil or can inspire them.
Right.
Like what you said, like, I need to shed this. I need to move on. Whereas like another person could be like, it's doomed. And then that person won't let it go. They won't do anything. And then there's no growth, I don't know. So I think it's like really important for sure. And it's like that, like with runes, Hagalos is like one of the scary runes because it is like the tower card. It is the shedding things away. And like, I like that rune though. Like it was one of the runes that I wore. When I wore it, I felt really empowered and I had a lot of transformation with it. So even that isn't scary. So like if it comes up in a reading, it's not like, oh my God, it's more like, okay, you have change.
That's how I feel about both the tower and the death card.
Tarot.
Yeah.
Because you read tarot.
Yeah, I was going to say that because it's all about how you interpret it and what does that tower mean for you. That tower for somebody could be, your tire bursts, and that's like could be the end of the world for them. But to someone else, that's not even a huge problem. So it's all about the interpretation of that and the power of suggestion. And we can project just as people because we're all viewing the world through our own like personal lenses, through our own experiences. So even though you can be very similar to somebody, they're not experiencing the same exact thing that you have.
Right.
So, and a lot with spirituality, people run to it and use it as another form of alternative therapy, essentially. So then you have all these people who are trying to be better, trying to get better, trying to heal. They're open to it. But some people have other stuff going on as well on top of that. And you're like, okay, this isn't necessarily the best grounding for them. They have to explore another option as well. So then you have people who don't have that grounding, who are tapping in, tuning in, and then just going wild.
Just go
wild with the oracle.
Yeah, I see that for sure. But that's what it is.
It is what it is. I love it. I think it's really cool. And I think astrology is extremely interesting. So if someone is interested in astrology, like what would be like your first suggestion to them? Like
to learn about it, you mean?
To learn. Yeah.
Just even if it's a personal, like you're just trying to explore your chart, like what's your advice?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, I like sitting down with them and talking to them about their chart. And then I can show them things. I can show them, like I go to astro.com to check out my chart, but I don't know how to tell somebody just how to do it. I think it walks them through like how to do it. My mom showed me how to do it, which is how I know how to do it. But there are so many apps that people can look up their charts now, or if you just Google how to look up my birth chart, and the truth is that probably the easiest thing to do to really try to understand the energy of your chart. And it does take a little bit of time, but there are two, kind of planets. They're luminaries, but the sun and the moon, they're just called planets to make it easy, but like they move pretty quickly. And so just like, when you learn tarot or runes, pull a card of the day and see how your day goes. In astrology, you can see where the sun is moving around your chart, and it will light up kind of the energy of that degree. Oh. And so you can kind of see what parts of your chart, like the energy of them. And the same goes with like the moon. As the moon travels through the different signs, you can kind of get a feeling for the energy kind of your chart as the moon passes through. And so I would kind of show people where in their chart, certain planets are and just certain things to look for. And I think that just kind of gauging their own feelings is a really good way to do it. And then just knowing what to look for. And there's just certain words. When a planet is touching another planet in the chart, it's called conjunct. So knowing that the word is conjunct, then you know what to kind of look up maybe. Because there's so many books out there. There are beginner astrology books. I don't actually personally use any of the apps, so I can't speak to any of them. Some of them might be very good. I mean, astrology is becoming more popular, so more apps are being created. But generally, just being able to follow the way the sun moves in your own chart and the way you feel that day. There are a lot of other planets affecting you as well. But I think when people are interested, if they come to me about it, I say, okay, well, I'll sit you down and kind of just do a brief explanation of your chart and what to look for and, what's coming up. And sometimes it's really cool when somebody comes to me and they're going to have maybe a major Saturn transit. The outer planets move slowly and, the inner planets move faster. So, the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, they're faster moving planets. So the transits you're not necessarily going to feel strong. But then you get to the outer planets, you get to Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. They kind of pack a punch with their transits over your chart. And so when somebody comes to me and they have one of those slower moving planets coming up to maybe a group of the planets in their own birth chart, this is such a cool time to learn astrology. You have to learn because you're going to feel it as Saturn moves over each planet so strongly, and you'll really get kind of a feeling for the energy of it. And then you get to experience it firsthand. It's not like you're going to a book and just reading about it, because in my experience, people learn from doing, not necessarily just from reading. And so as they do it, they can kind of follow and see what's coming up. So yeah. And then we can look at different dates to specifically look at and be like, this is going to be a big energy time. And you'll really get a feeling for it if you pay attention around these times. So
it's really cool.
Really
cool. I'm definitely going to have to deep dive.
Obviously we'll sit down and we'll do it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So if somebody is looking for an astrologer, there's a lot of stuff online. Yeah. What's your advice in finding somebody that is a good astrologer? What are things to look out for?
I don't know is the answer. I mean, there are some good astrologers online, especially people who teach. Leah Whitehorse is a really good one. She's in England, and Stephen Forrest he's a great storyteller. He tells a lot of stories with astrology, which is a lot of fun. And he's really into the past lives and everything. But all of the people who are more popular are hard to book with. You can book, but they're you can come in 5 years, and, And Kelly, what's Kelly's last name? I can't remember. But yeah, so I honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know the answer to how to find a good astrologer. I mean, I know that they can book with me and I give readings, but I have friends who I talk to but a lot of them, I don't even know if they have space right now to give readings. Yeah, I'll think about that. And also, unless there are a lot of people who are knowledgeable, but unless I've gotten a reading from them personally, I don't really know if I like to experience things in order to know that I can recommend it. Yeah. So I've gotten a rune reading from you and I thought it was great.
Thank you. So if you're looking for an astrologer, book with Jasmine.
Yeah. I mean, we are.
So we will recommend.
I was just curious, there's a lot of astrology talk on the internet, on social media and stuff. And it's how do you navigate that world?
It seem very overwhelming because there is so much information. I know for me, talking to you just now, is making me interested in deep diving.
Yeah.
Whereas before, like, if it resonates with you, like, you have the people, like, you have tarot people, astrology people, they hone in on that and, like, go hard and study it. But it can seem very overwhelming. Like, what is the moon sign? How does that affect me?
Right.
The rising, like, how much influence does that have over my life? Because people always hone in on the luminaries, the sun and the moon. And then you have, okay, well, what's my rising do? Okay, don't forget about the Mars placement.
Right.
Where do you, like...
Totally.
Well, I have a question about placements, actually.
Yeah.
This might be random, but I'm curious. It hit me. What does it mean when a planet's retrograde in your chart?
Yeah, so that means, like, technically, if you're looking at a chart, it just means it's going backwards. But it technically, from an astronomical standpoint, this is one of those things that I have read many times. For whatever reason, it's like based on how the planet looks in the sky. It's literally, so the planets all go around, but it's, for whatever reason, it looks like it's going backwards based on where it is between the sun and the earth.
Okay.
So for some reason, like if the earth is here and the sun is here, so obviously we're on a podcast, so you can't, but like if the sun is here and it's coming up here, it'll be looking like it's going in that direction.
Okay.
But if it's down here, it looks like it's going in that direction.
Okay.
So then it's retrograde because it's going backwards technically by the way it looks.
Okay.
I think that is the way to explain it. But essentially in a chart, when you're looking at the astrological chart, you know, everyone hears about Mercury in retrograde, but all of the planets, the moon doesn't and the sun doesn't, but the rest of them do just because of the way the earth and the sun align, essentially. And so it's just like energetically another pass of whatever it is, of the energy of that planet. So for example, I actually really sometimes I find that I don't focus on Jupiter enough, and Jupiter is like the benevolent good luck planet, and it brings good energy. You know, you hear like a lot about karma and everything with astrology, but it also has like a lighter, happier side. When Venus and Jupiter come around, generally it brings good things. And so if Jupiter comes around your sun, you're going to feel so happy around that time, you know. Well, I do have to caveat it where if you are going through something really intense at that time, like obviously you could have had a death in your family around that time when Jupiter goes around your sun, but it just gives you a little bit of a boost during that time. So it doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's going to be an amazing time. And Jupiter is the planet of big things. So sometimes it makes you want to eat more and go shopping and feel good. And so afterwards you just feel like you just spent too much money and ate too much. So every holiday for a lot of people. And so but essentially, like if Jupiter comes over your planets at one point, then you'll feel good. And then if the universe wants to send you a gift around that time, it'll retrograde Jupiter over your sun again. And then it'll come back again. And then it's like the universe is like, you need to just feel nice for a little longer.
I definitely I think my Neptune is also retrograde.
Yeah, so your Mars, so the Neptune retrograde, you know, that's an outer planet. So that's actually generational. Like, so around your time, everyone had that. Anybody born around your time, it's like a grouping. The Mars is like a faster moving planet. So, and it's not retrograde for that long. What generally happens if a planet is retrograde in your birth chart is it kind of, I guess the word could be like dampens the energy a little bit. So like a Mars in Aries is like very happy in Aries. It's like, go, get things done, like, and everything. But having it retrograde kind of calms that energy a little bit. It makes it like not as aggressive as a Mars in Aries could be. It kind of slows it down a little bit. And what I would then look at is kind of, well, why? So where's your north node? Where's your south node? What is your karmic journey in this life? And if you maybe came from, did we look at that for you? I can't remember. Do you remember?
We talked about the north node. So that was Pisces north node.
Pisces north node.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fifth cells.
Yeah. So essentially like what I would guess, and I have to look at all of your chart, but what I would guess is like maybe in the past you had a chart that was like very, like maybe in past lives you were a go kind of person. And in this life they're like, no, we're going to calm you down a little bit. So it's always interesting to see how the planets align because like it's believed by many and it fits for me too, the idea that we choose when we're born and that we come in karmically. And people then always ask about like C-section babies and everything. And I do believe that child also chose when to be born. That was the time they were meant to be born. even if it was scheduled, it was meant to be born at that time. And so it's always interesting to see people's charts and like, okay, so you chose to be born at this time. Why? You know, you decided to join this film that we're in this moment. You entered stage left and here you are, you know? And so it's really fascinating to then get to see like the energy of the character that you're going to play, you know? So it's really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. I like it. So I have another one about retrograde because I'm curious.
Yeah.
So some people will have a lot of planets like that in their chart, and some people won't have any.
Yeah.
Does that have any significance, or is that just how it shakes out?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that it would depend on a little bit on like which planets it is for people and everything. But if somebody has a lot of retrograde planets, it would be an interesting like karmic chart to kind of look at, like how that has manifested in their lives, you know, and why. Like, why would somebody karmically choose to be an Aries Mars, but then choose to have it retrograde, you know? And sometimes I just think that it worked somehow in the much larger whole. So like whole being WHOLE, not like the whole of the chart. There was something about the chart that your spirit liked, but it just didn't want to be a go Mars person. So it liked when it went retrograde in that moment over, you know, like choosing something else in the buffet of planets that you can choose from.
I have 2, but she has like 5. You have a lot. And then my brother doesn't have any. And I remember thinking to myself, or I like looked up why that could be. Yeah. I didn't really get a good answer for it. Yeah. I had like some people saying that, oh, it's because your brother's like an older soul and he has less work. But I didn't feel comfortable with that at all. So I just kind of let it sit. And I'm like, that's just the mysteries of the universe for me. Like I have nothing for it. So
I think that if somebody, like, I don't have a lot of retrograde planets in my chart either. What I look for in terms of if somebody has a lot of karma that they're working on in this life versus somebody who has a smoother life is actually more the relationship between the planets. So if somebody has like a lot of trines, then their planets work together well within them. Whereas if somebody has a lot of squares in their chart, they're generally like, there's a lot of like talking points, you know, if somebody has like a sun square moon, for example, the way their sun shines out into the world versus the way it squares their inner feelings. The moon represents the inner feelings and the sun is like the ego. It doesn't quite work together. So their feelings, it's kind of like when you're in a restaurant that you're like, this is just not my vibe. I mean, that's kind of like the way it is inside of you. Like you're shining out in a way that doesn't necessarily work with your inner feelings. And so it creates a little bit of tension within you because your feelings are like, no, I want to be on my couch. And your sun is like, no, I want to go to the club, you know? And so there's like, which is going to win out in that moment. And so the squares create that tension. The retrogrades generally, I think, slow things down and maybe make people contemplative. Like I definitely notice that in people who have Mercury retrograde. And a lot of people with Mercury in retrograde who like I've done chart readings for and talked to and everything, they tend to be very like think before they speak. They're not people who, in general, this is grossly generalizing, but they're not verbal people who can just talk who want to talk forever and ever and say whatever comes to the mind off the, you know, whatever. They're people generally who, I obviously do not have Mercury retrograde in my chart. I guess you don't either. But it's generally like a more contemplative energy in a person. And it's either like maybe they did talk too much in a past life, or maybe they are in this life meant to be like a little bit more thoughtful in the way they speak for whatever reason. So it's kind of like that.
I like that better. I mean, that makes more sense to me than what that person had said to me prior. It didn't fit. Like, it didn't fit. Yeah.
That's another example through the lens of the translator, right?
Because you're a million miles a minute, you know, so wanting to slow things down, that would make more sense that you would have.
I would have that in my chart. Yeah. And so I should be more contemplative.
Yeah.
But I tend to just go on impulse a lot.
What did you say? You live your life a quarter mile?
Yeah, that's one of my quotes. I live my life a quarter mile all the time. It's from Fast and the Furious. I'm
excited for her to do your chart.
Yeah, I'm very excited. It's just one of my quotes.
What's the other one you like?
It's a Deion Sanders quote from like 2006, 2007. He had it might be a totally different person, but there was a show that he had on like Bravo, and I would watch it casually. But he would have these crazy like sayings he would say, or his quotes he lived by. And one of the quotes was that when you look good, you feel good. When you feel good, you play good. And when you play good, they pay good. And when they pay good, you stay good. So that's just one of my things.
She says that all
I say all the time because how
a long one.
I've been saying like for years is when you are content with your being, then you're moving through the world
Totally.
in a more authentic way. So for him, he's an athlete sport, so he was better at his job, so then he made more money, and then he was fine. So that's how he rationalized it. But that's just how I just choose to live by that.
Yeah.
Because when you are content with yourself, then you're able to move through the world authentically, and then you're in alignment, and then everything's okay, essentially. So that's how I rationalize it, and however that means to you. For me, it means being really hard on myself sometimes, and being outrageously like particular about how I present myself to the world. But if that's how I'm in alignment, then yay.
Yeah.
And you recently discovered your Scorpio rising.
I did. Did she tell you this?
I think I mentioned it to you.
I had my birth time miscalculated for a solid decade.
That's fine. I mean, it happens a lot.
So I have been masquerading as a Sagittarius rising publicly. Okay. I'm actually Scorpio rising. And when I had that revelation of the birth time switch, everything made sense. Because I never felt like with astrology, like I never connected enough to it because I didn't fully resonate with some of the placements. I would pull my chart, I'm like, okay, well, this is what this means, but that doesn't reflect well for me. I don't know if I like this translation. So I was like, okay, well, this just isn't for me. But when I recalculated it and looked at my chart again, I was like, okay, this is what this means.
Yeah.
This is me. What do you mean? This is how a Scorpio rising is characterized. That's describing me.
Yeah.
Like, what?
When she told me, I was like, this makes a lot more sense.
Because a couple of the other placements shifted in my chart. So before my chart would calculate, like, I think I had like 5 or 6 Leo placements of Sagittarius rising, but I only had one prominent water placement, and I don't think I had any air. But now I have an Aquarius placement. So certain things, I'm like, this makes sense.
Yeah.
Because people always say, like, I could come off extroverted, but that's not necessarily, like, me. Like, I prefer to be more reserved in certain things. Like, I'll show myself when I feel safe to people. So then I some of my Cancer, and then the drive to want to be a nurturer. That's been one of my motivations in life.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily, like, where I'm supposed to be, though. I'm supposed to be more independent. It's not too... Well, you'll be able to tell me.
Her North Node's in Capricorn.
My North Node's in Capricorn.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be in that more independent energy, but that's not my default. My default is to partner up and want to be taken care of or taking care of something. So when I don't have that action in my life, then I feel like I'm missing something. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's that's it.
Ashley's journey.
Yeah.
So I'm masquerading as a super extrovert fire sign, but I'm not.
Long story short.
Because there's just so many, like, I think that, especially as astrology becomes more popular and more people are looking into it, I think that people get surprised at how in-depth it is. There's so many things, we've made it, just a sun sign thing in Cosmo magazine, which, has its place. I'm sure people are getting messages out of that are valuable to them in their lives, but at the same time, there are just so many aspects to it, not only the planets, but, then there's like the asteroids and the lots and which we were talking about lots in our conversation before, and, and the houses. And so the interesting thing is sometimes it's also believed that if you completely lack one element, one of two things can happen, and it actually goes for the reverse as well. If you have like everything in one element, you can either completely take on that element, it's believed, or not take it on at all. So like you could have all of your planets in air and be the least air-like person in the world and actually this happened, I really saw it in my friend's chart. She had all fire and she's the least fiery person I've ever met. She's so chill and just like, so shocked when I saw that she was all fire. And I was like, do you just like, what's going on inside there? Is there a lot? She's like, no, I just feel relaxed. And so sometimes like if you completely, like you were saying, you completely lack air, but you feel like you identify with air. I mean, it could be that Or also, like, I know that in your chart, from what you just told me, or you just mentioned that, like, your north node is Capricorn, which means your south node is Cancer. But sometimes I will also look at the person's south node, and it would make sense if you're an air sign that you came into this life with that air energy in your south node. Mm-hmm. So, like, I wouldn't have been surprised if I saw one of the air signs as your south node, because that would just mean that you have enough of that. So, for example, in my chart, I'm actually the reverse of you. I'm Cancer Capricorn as well for my north-south node, but I'm coming from Capricorn. Mm-hmm. But I have no other earth in my chart. It's just that. But, because the way it manifests is giving me the earth I need in order to. And I think that in order for me to walk my karmic path of going towards Cancer, I need to be able to let go.
Oh, that's so cool.
So,
that's very cool.
Whereas for you, you're going from Cancer to Capricorn. So you're coming from this very caring background.
Severe.
Yeah. And you just feel it, and you have very, very, very strong feelings and mothering feelings and caring. And so that's where you're coming from. But you're actually in this life learning to be more kind of business minded, more structure minded, more like understanding the structures. They say that people in the South Node Capricorn just get capitalism. They just naturally understand it. And I can definitely vouch for that. Yeah. And for you, you're learning capitalism. Yeah. You're learning how it works, and you're learning to understand it and be part of it. In fact, a lot of people who have your north-south node end up, like a lot of the people I talk to, they're firemen, doctors, like people who are on this, or social workers, or people who are of service, that genuinely cared for people, especially as children. But then they either start their own companies, start their own private practice, start their own some kind of business to allow them to understand
Reiki.
That business kind of part of it. So it ends up being a mix. So the Reiki and the caring and developing your own business podcast and everything around it is exactly that kind of path.
Anytime in my life that I've been content or have felt a feeling of flow, have always been when I'm in that boss position. Mm-hmm. So even if in relationship dynamics, my best relationships, I was the more dominant individual in that relationship. Mm-hmm. And those were some of my better relationships, was me being the one that's I am the person. I am that person for you. And showing up in that energy.
And this is where energy starts getting a little bit convoluted, but that could be the mothering energy as well. That's sort of Cancer.
A lot of my, everything. Some of my relationships, I was that, the mother, the nurturer, that protector, that mama bear situation. And that tends to be a dynamic that I'm in with everything, friendships, all of it. I'm always that person. That's not what I want. Not anymore. Not anymore. I used to be that masculine, tough lady, but I don't want to necessarily be in that energy constantly.
Interesting. We'll have to look at what else is.
I'm very interested.
Yeah,
this is so cool. I feel like I'm being put on another trajectory.
It's another layer. It's kind of in maps you can see where the roads are, and then you can add a layer to where the forests are, and you can add a layer where the electric poles are, or whatever. It's kind of astrology is just another way of seeing the world.
It's another tool of translation. And it's very, very cool.
It is really cool.
Very cool. Yeah. But the ancients used to have us be integrated into their functionality of their lives. Mm-hmm. It's the past couple, how many years? I don't know. This is such a loose fact, guys.
Ancestor. An ancestor. Yeah, he worked for the king, so.
And there's another loose quote, but.
I feel like I might be making it up.
I call it her drunk uncle.
How every billionaire has an astrologer.
Oh, okay.
So every billionaire has an astrologer that they consult. And
I believe it.
There was one of our presidents, might have been Lyndon B. Johnson. Mm-hmm. His wife would orchestrate every decision that he made. Every decision through their astrologer. And she gave credit to his success because of that. But he's one of many. I'm pretty sure almost all of our presidents have had a staff astrologer, period. But this is such a loose, very, very loose fact.
Yeah.
Well, it's verbatim.
I can literally sit down with somebody and look at their chart and show them when things are going to happen and give loose dates on when it's going to happen. And when it does, it's proof to them, So it's astrology feels in a lot of ways more like a science, kind of like metaphysics. So metaphysics, I think, is more on the science side of energy, and astrology is more on the energetic side. Metaphysics is more on the science part of science, and astrology is more on the energetic side. And so essentially, it's like I remember I was talking to my sister. I hope she's okay with me saying this, but she was just having some like difficulties with her husband at the time, and they were just not getting along and everything. And she actually calls me Nostradamus now because of this. Like, but like, I mean, please don't let that like stay as a I totally don't want to be known as that, but she's like, put this on your website. I'm like, no, don't do that.
Respectfully.
Don't exactly. Wow, but Jupiter was coming around like a point in their chart because it's all the energy. So now when like two people come together, they create the chart of their relationship. So now you can look up a chart of two people's relationship and see how the planets come around that. And so there was a specific point in their chart that was a very profound point, and Jupiter was coming around it. And I was like, oh, it's going to get really good in a few weeks. And she was like, that's impossible. And I was like, no, it's going to. And then sure enough, like things like cleared out, and it was like really great because Jupiter came around and everything. Wow. And so like when that happens, people are like, whoa, when it like proves itself. So it makes sense. So yeah, the verification. Really so like, while it may sound to somebody who doesn't understand astrology, it may sound insane that a president would follow an astrologer in any way. There's a form of self-verification that they're being told this, and then it happens, and then they know it's happening. So it's not like an idiotic thing for them to follow it, because they're like, yes, it's just another part of my process, and yes, it does come down to like really who you listen to, and there are a lot of ways to translate things. And I think that's like for right now, for example, Pluto's moving into Aquarius. It's the big conversation topic. It has been for a long time. It's moved into Aquarius, out of Aquarius, into Aquarius, and out. And now it's finally in. And so I didn't listen to a lot of astrologers talk about the election at all. But what I was told from my friends was almost everyone said Kamala was going to win the election. And I was like, well, honestly, if you look at it from just Pluto, that makes sense, because Aquarius is kind of a new era. It's a new thing. Yeah. And Trump is definitely going to bring in new things. Yeah. But Kamala also, just by being who she was, would also bring in something new, like a new way of looking at things, maybe a new thing for women in general, or caring, or all of that. So there was kind of a newness to it that I could see where they were coming from. Making predictions in general is always a little dangerous and hazardous, especially if you're saying the same thing as everyone else, I think. But like it's energy. So some astrologers do also channel, and they receive messages. And Molly McCord actually does a really nice intuitive astrology monthly, podcast online. And I like hers because she does the intuitive things as well. So unless you have some kind of ability to also channel like the future Edgar Cayce style or something, there's not really a way to know for sure what's going to happen. I mean, and there's so many things so political science was actually my major in college. So you follow the international relations was it. And, Vladimir Putin has a chart. Trump has a chart. And when you can see that they're having various transits coming up, then you can see certain things are happening. You don't necessarily know what's happening, but you know the energy that is affecting them. And so then all of a sudden you get to see how two people can get along or not get along, but it's from an energetic perspective. So I couldn't tell somebody, I know that their wife is sick, or something like that. I couldn't say that, but I would know that something is going on with the moon and their feelings if Pluto is coming around. And so that affects not only their feelings, but maybe the women surrounding them and everything. So yeah. And then there's so many different types of astrology as well. I mean, there's not only birth chart readings, there's not only transit readings, there's horary astrology, which tells you you can ask a question, and based off of, it's actually believed that in the moment you ask the question, the way the planets are aligned in that moment reveal the answer, which is really fascinating. Wow. Yeah.
Where I'm at with my life this year is that whole soul exploration and refining who I am, my identity. So what you're explaining is like a life map. Mm-hmm. So it's just another way for me to understand.
Yeah. And that's another question that comes up. It's why aren't all astrologers incredibly wealthy? And the answer, if you can predict the future, and it's well, I don't want to sit and look at companies' birth charts all the time. It doesn't feel valuable. I think that part of the reason I like astrology is the ability to help people with their karmic road roadmap, and help guide them along, just to let them know what's coming up and, why, shed some light on why they chose to be born in the moment they were born. And, if I can help. So it's the helpful part of it that's attractive to me. And it's not the money part, And so I think that's, some people may understand that and others may not. So.
I feel like with anything that's fringe, it's not that fringe to me or to us, but to the general public that might not be open and receptive to believing in anything like astrology or magic in general, it's hard for them to rationalize it.
Well, yeah. And I mean, sometimes it doesn't work logically, but also I do think that we have been trained to be afraid of it. Mm-hmm. So,
Condition.
There's just, the connection to the divine, the conversations to the universe, it's meant to go through someone else. It's not meant to be our own conversation anymore. And people don't necessarily understand it. And frankly, the witch trials, they didn't happen that long ago. In terms of trauma and the way it's passed down, those were some pretty loud lessons. And so actually, I was just thinking how one of my favorite memes that I've seen online recently was there's never been a better time to be a witch, because right now, nobody believes in magic or anything. So if you call someone a witch, you're the crazy one.
Oh my God,
it's a safe time to be one. But it's also because there's a lot of fear in people for being different and speaking in ways. And it was just that doing any healing that wasn't what God wanted. And so they were considered evil, and so essentially the first witches that were burned were just trying to heal and women who were trying to heal their neighborhood, but the people in their community, their village. I don't know if they had neighborhoods back then, but but essentially, those were very, very loud messages, and it really does silence people from wanting to talk about it and show that there are ways to communicate with the universe that are your own. Your own ways to do it. And it's not scary and it's not unhealthy. And once I was I do have clients who are very religious, and they come to me to talk to me about astrology because the universe is the universe. It's all the energy, and it's all the same, essentially. It's just that energy level. So God is it's all the same, at some level, no matter what you call it, the universe, God, Allah, Mary, or however you want it, it's but I think that in the end, the most important thing is to understand that it's there and it has your best interest at heart. No matter what you call it or how you talk to it, it's there and it has your best interest at heart. And I think that through that, then we all understand that we are all linked through that. And we're all, I don't know, it's just really beautiful, the energy of love that everyone is connected through.
Yeah.
Whether they choose to acknowledge it or not.
Yeah.
And if we start to choose to acknowledge it, a lot of change can happen in a beautiful way. But I love that. And you're very inspiring.
She is.
Truly. This conversation has been very enlightening for me.
Yeah.
Big time. I wasn't expecting to have this kind of personal revelations. So I'm kind of freaked out. I cry a lot.
It's a cancer.
It's a cancer, but this is very interesting. So I've always been so intimidated by astrology because I didn't have the drive and the attention span to want to deep dive the way you can with it. And now this is definitely interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to close up the episode.
I think it's a beautiful way to close it up.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in booking with Jasmine, we'll have all links down below. Do you want to tell them where they can find you?
The website is jasminesolstice.com. Solstice, SOLSTICE. And Jasmine, sorry, I should just spell the whole thing out. It's just JASMINESOLSTICE.com. And so that's where the information about me is and everything. So, and I'd love to give the readings, and if anybody is looking.
Yeah.
I guess the best way to just is fill out, there's a little form to email me through the site.
Okay, perfect.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I guess my email is also jasminesolstice@gmail.com, so anybody can
they can
me
email
down.
direct.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll link all of that down below. And
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just been really great.
Really great.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm so glad.